Well, first he says this.
I think that law is an unfortunate one. I think that it is, I fear, subject to potential abuse. That is certainly one of the concerns that I have, that you will end up in a situation where people are racially profiled. I understand the frustration of people in Arizona, but the concern I have about the law that they have passed is that I think it has the possibility of leading to racial profiling, or we think that the law, as enacted, could violate federal civil rights statutes.
Then he admits this.
Have you read the Arizona law?
I have not had a chance to. I've glanced at it. I have not read it.
It's 10 pages. It's a lot shorter than the health care bill, which was 2,000 pages long. I'll give you my copy of it if you would like to have a copy.
By the way, the Attorney General can also download the Arizona immigration law at foxnews.com/yourworld if he wants a copy, but I digress. Joining me now, Texas Congressman Ted Poe. He's the Republican who made Holder admit that he has not read that law. Congressman, that was actually very riveting to watch because it cuts to the core of this debate. Just like a prior guest I had, a lovely fellow, but they're saying things based on innuendo or suspicion, but not on fact, and developing whole protests and movements and potential legal action on a falsity.
That's correct. That's correct. And General Holder actually said that he had got his briefing earlier from media accounts. So now we have the media briefing the Attorney General on what the law is. Your previous caller guest couldn't have been more inaccurate. The bill in 4 states racial profiling is prohibited under the legislation. You cannot just stop a person on the side of the road. The person has to be committing some unlawful act, like driving under the influence of alcohol. Once the legitimate stop has been made, the officer, if he has reasonable suspicion, can inquire as to the status of the person that's in the vehicle.
And what's more, you astutely point that out, sir, but what's left out of this here is there are steep fines and penalties to any officer who violates that. That's also in there, but it's also free for folks to read. But why do you think, I mean, it's sort of like how long have you been beating your wife or stop beating your wife? I mean, you have to justify and refute a negative that ain't there. I mean, what happens now?
Well, the law, in my opinion, is clearly constitutional. It was drafted that way to be constitutional. It takes the federal law and implements it into Arizona law. In fact, it's even more restrictive than the federal law. And people ought to just read the legislation. They'll see that it's constitutional, but it doesn't promote their political agenda if they find out it's constitutional. So
you know, here's the thing where it's always a sticky wicket for you, Congressman, and that is this. That, well, certainly it's not written there, but any sheriff or policeman, law enforcement personnel can, with a wink and a nod, be targeting those, let's say, of Hispanic origin or color, to deliberately stop them, whether they're speeding or not, to justify going after them. What do you say?
Well, as you said, that officer then is subject to criminal penalties. But you can say that about any law. You know, the law can be constitutional, but the application, if it's used by racial profiling, the application is unconstitutional. And that can be applied to any law that we have already on the books. And if that is done, the case is thrown out and the officer has to face criminal sanctions. So the law is constitutional, and the officers must, if they violate if they do racial profiling, they're subject to penalty as well.
You know, when I watched that exchange, Congressman, what I liked about it is you were kind of like Andy Griffith in those old series where you're just asking a simple question and then a bombshell. No, well, you know, I didn't get it really around to reading it and all that. And I'm thinking, this isn't a 2,000 or 3,000 page health care bill in law. This is a 10, 16 page, depending on what version you have. We have both versions on our website, by the way, sir. And you're the highest law enforcement official in the land, and you haven't even looked at it. You don't need Cliff Note versions of something that short.
No, and he could, you know, he should have read it, especially when he's making the assertions he's making about potential civil rights violations and all of these comments as the Attorney General, the leading law enforcement officer in the country, wow. And he's basing that on media reports and not on the legislation. It's very unfortunate that he hadn't read the bill. You know, he is a smart person. I think when he reads the bill, he's going to realize, as a smart lawyer, the bill is constitutional.
Well, remind me not to get on your bad side. But Congressman, very good having you. By the way, folks, as promised, I do have the copy of the law there, just to the point of what they need for documentation to prove you're a citizen. Any one of the following: a valid license, a valid state ID, a passport, a valid company ID, proper green papers. Any one of these would do. So if you have a valid license, that's it, game over, you're done, you're free, you can go. Any one, not what you're told you have to present like reams of documentation. Any one of those, any one of them, a multiple choice, pick one, just one. Not all of them, not all of the above, just one. My God. All right, Governor.